Hey there, welcome to Takeaway with Sam Oches, a podcast from Nation's Restaurant News. I'm Sam Oches, editor-in-chief here at NRN, and this is the show where I give you an all-access pass to the restaurant industry's most influential decision makers. This week, I'm talking with Darren Spicer, the co-founder and CEO of Clutch Coffee, a drive-thru coffee shop that has grown to 15 locations across the Carolinas since its debut in 2018. Darren grew up in Oregon, and he worked as a broista at Dutch Bros before going into medical device sales. And while he traveled the country for that job, he realized there were parts of the country that had no access to the burgeoning drive-thru coffee scene, meaning there was plenty of white space to start his own concept. He ultimately chose the Charlotte, North Carolina area to launch Clutch Coffee in 2018 and has since grown across the Carolinas with an intense focus on quality, culture, and community. Darren joined the podcast to talk about rising above the competition in drive-thru coffee and why your relationship with your customer is everything in getting your business off the ground. In this interview, you will learn more about why the best market for your business might not be anywhere close to you, why your loyalty program must be as easy as possible to access, and why you should develop a strong bench of leaders before pursuing growth. As always, be sure to like and subscribe to Takeaway on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. You can also leave your feedback on those platforms. A little bit of love goes a long way in getting this show to more listeners. You can also now follow me on TikTok, where I will be sharing special insights from this show, but also other exclusive content, including behind-the-scenes looks at my industry travels and experiences. Go follow me at Takeaway Sam. That's at Takeaway Sam. Jumping now into my interview with Clutch Coffee CEO Darren Spicer. Also, don't forget to stick around after the interview, as I will share my 7 takeaways from this discussion, actionable insights that you can take with you on the go. All right, I'm sitting down with Darren Spicer, the co-founder and CEO of Clutch Coffee. Darren, thanks for joining me today.
Appreciate you having me on. Thank you.
Absolutely. So coffee, near and dear to me, as a big fan of coffee, but also just so much coffee innovation going on out there, which is why, Darren, I wanted to talk to you and Clutch Coffee and get a feeling for what you guys are up to. But for those who are not familiar, they might not be based in the Carolinas or travel through the Carolinas and be familiar with Clutch Coffee. Give us the quick rundown of what's this brand all about.
Yeah, so Clutch launched in 2018 as a drive-through centric coffee brand. We started in Mooresville, North Carolina. We now have, as of yesterday, 15 locations in the Carolinas across both North and South Carolina. And I grew up working in drive-through coffee when I was younger. I grew up in Oregon, and where drive-through coffee is on every other corner, and really just had a passion for people, for culture building, and for the business aspect of it. And so, went through some real jobs, adult jobs after being a barista in college, but something kept kind of pulling me back to Clutch, and so gave it a shot. Didn't want to have any regrets. Wanted to go for it, and we got off the ground in 2018.
Someday in 20 years, when somebody writes the book on drive-through coffee, the history and how it took over the country, all signs point back to Oregon. Oregon is at the center of this. I'm so curious because it's like, is it weather? What is it about Oregon that started this whole trend?
I think it's a Northwest culture. So I think Oregon and Washington collectively really coffee is just very woven into the fabric. And I do think weather plays a factor, right? It's if it's gloomy or overcast or raining, you kind of think about 15 or 20 years ago, or even 30 years ago, of, like grabbing a hot coffee or something to kind of comfort you through that. And it rains a lot. It's overcast a lot. But even that's an interesting thing where that's evolved now, where most brands are doing 70 to 80% iced coffee versus hot. So yeah, the Northwest it's woven into the fabric of the culture. And then I think now you're seeing it spread to other areas of the country where, I don't think caffeine discriminates. People need it everywhere. And we're seeing some success in other areas.
And really kind of met the moment too with, COVID and all things shifting to kind of convenience off premises. Obviously that sort of drive-through only model became really appealing. So really fascinating to see how much it's coming up. But you particularly identified an opportunity in the Carolinas. We were just talking before we hit record. You didn't live in the Carolinas. You just saw the opportunity there when you started Clutch. Tell me about that and why you wanted to start there.
Yeah. So prior to this, I had a fairly fairly successful career in medical device sales. And so I had spent a lot of time in different markets across the country. Had spent a good amount of time in Charlotte and Nashville. Really liked those areas as younger growing demographics that we felt frankly were underserved from a drive-through coffee perspective, but the regions in general loved drive-through concept of other things. So we loved that. There was no public transportation, generally speaking, so everyone drives from bedroom communities, so that fit the bill. The cost of real estate was a lot more approachable than the West Coast. Minimum wage was a little bit lower. So there are a lot of factors that said, hey, this is probably a calculated risk. This is a little bit more approachable than going to one of the more expensive areas of the country to do it. So that's really kind of what stood out initially. And so we were really scouting those two areas, and an opportunity came about for a franchisee of another brand had two locations, wanted to basically get out of that and be done with it and retire. So it was an opportunity for us to buy those two and control the leases and then rebrand and open as Clutch. So that's what we did.
So remind me what year this was that you guys first opened up.
We opened March 3rd of 2018. So we got the deal was signed in the fall of 2017, and then we had about 120 days to get our ducks in a row and go.
That's amazing. And 2018, really before, I mean, I don't think I'd ever heard of Dutch Bros at that point. I don't think, I mean, Seven Brew might not have existed. 2017, I think Dutch Bros started maybe. So, I mean, all of the activity has happened really since then. And I think to your point, I live in Ohio, and we just got Seven Brew here. Big B is here, but other than that, the East Coast, it had not been touched by this whole drive-through coffee phenomenon. What was the reaction from customers when you guys opened? Because having lived in North Carolina for many years too, I know that it also wasn't a thing down there. Did they respond immediately to it?
Yeah, the best analogy that I can use on that is it's like when you got your first smartphone, you didn't know you needed it until you saw it, and you're like, "Oh my gosh, this is what was I ever doing with this flip phone before? Like this is amazing." And so kind of the same principle of primarily just Starbucks and Dunkin' is all that's really been nationally relevant there. And so I think Dutch Bros was a very early trailblazer in creating a different kind of culture and ambiance for that drive-through, something that's upbeat, that's fast, that brings some energy. It's not your quiet coffee house. And that's where I worked when I was younger, as a teenager, and then in my early 20s. And so got a great foundation from that, and actually wanted to franchise with them. They changed their model for the final time around 2014, 2013, 2014. And so then that just kind of inspired me to want to branch out and start my own. So when we got to the Carolinas, people would always ask, like, well, how is it similar? How are you like Starbucks or Dunkin', or how are you different? And our biggest thing was like, we got to just get you to the store to come try it. We got to get you to try the entire experience. And so, if we can deliver a better customer centric experience, a better product at a better price, and hopefully we are just as quick, if not quicker, that's how we win. And so that's been really our focus for customers. And, you never know, like, you put in all this effort before, you think you know what you're doing. You learn later you didn't know as much as you thought you did, but you got to just go for it, and you got to put it out there. And so we went for that. And I think the community was very receptive, because we also are just very focused on being part of the community and not just a business that's there, but really giving back, whether it's local education, other events that are going on, fallen officer where we helped to donate, that created a nonprofit foundation in their honor, like just those things, and just really being part of the community.
Yeah, I was going to ask, I mean, about sort of the differentiating point, right? Because, some restaurant brands will say differentiation is in service, but, when it comes to like drive-through, okay, lots of other folks doing drive-through coffee, even Starbucks and Dunkin' are doing drive-through coffee, or differentiation in product. And you mentioned that you wanted to have this higher quality product. Tell me about that part of it. So how did you differentiate with the product? Was it just sourcing the beans, or how did you get a better quality coffee?
Great question. I think there's a couple different answers to that. So, and also it extends beyond coffee into other products as well, because fair amount of people might say, oh, I don't love coffee. Well, great. We also have teas, smoothies, energy drinks, juices. There's hopefully something for everybody. But on the coffee front, my personal experience going to some of the bigger brands like Starbucks, as an example, no offense, Starbucks, but but the coffee typically would taste more bitter or burnt, the espresso would. And learned later that it's almost kind of it's purposeful by design from their side. The longer you roast coffee, the more you can mask the imperfections in the beans. So if you want consistency in terms of the same flavor profile, they basically just smoke it and roast it longer to be it's consistently subpar in my opinion. But yeah, so for us, we wanted to partner with a roaster that was elite. And we said, hey, like we did a blind taste test of 30 different blends from 6 different roasters. And we said, price doesn't matter. We want the best quality. Because if you're going to pay $5 for a latte, it better be phenomenal. And we did this blind taste test. And of course, this is my 2 other co-founders and I. The one we landed on, of course, was one of the 3 most expensive. But that's okay. Like if we wanted to compete with like gas stations on selling coffee, we would just carry Folgers, right? Like so we really wanted quality, and that was something that I've been asked many times by people externally and internally, like finance, of like, hey, well, if we switched our coffee and had we could reduce our cost of goods, and it's like we need to be a premium product. So that's just our personal belief on it. And yeah, so we set out there. And then on other products like our smoothies, most brands out there, even including, Dutch Bros, Seven Brew, you mentioned, the smoothies they use are made with real fruit, but there's a boatload of sugar added to it. And I know that because we used to use the same product. We now work with a product that is 100% juice, no sugar added. And as a parent who has younger kids, which kids are crushing smoothies in the spring and the summer and are not having coffee, it matters. I think it matters to have something that's a better for you product as well.
Yeah, for sure. Well, this is such
Mhm.
an interesting time too for beverages, and actually, in fact, an interesting week. As I mentioned to you before we hit record, you and I are talking in a week where Taco Bell, Wendy's, and McDonald's have all, in announcing their quarterly results and plans for 2025, have all emphasized beverage as one of the things that they're really going to home in on to get new customers and to get customers coming back. Which, if I'm in the beverage game as you are, I might be a little bit worried because it's like, well, suddenly all the big chains are also chasing beverage, and coffee being a big part of that. But I'm just wondering your perspective. Here you are now, 7, 8 years into this Clutch Coffee business, and the state of beverage has to be a little bit exciting because people wanting to try different things, but simultaneously, the whole industry is moving in that direction. What does that mean for how you guys are innovating and keeping, kind of up to date with new products and keeping people coming in for more?
Yeah, it is a really interesting time in the landscape. I mean, I like one of the brands you mentioned with McDonald's, right? They launched the Cosmics or McCosmic concept of trying to be beverage centric. I kind of look at it in terms of like, do we feel threatened or are we nervous? I look at it in the same fashion of, we're doing a pilot right now with like hot breakfast sandwiches. Do I think someone's gonna stop going to McDonald's or Wendy's to come to get the food that we have? That's unlikely because what they do, that's their core competency, is they do food, they do breakfast, they do it well. Uh, the same thing here. Do I think someone's going to leave Clutch to go get the new, Starbucks' new stab at an energy drink, or McDonald's has something they're doing in terms of new frappuccinos? I think it's unlikely. I think it's just trying to capture people to make it as a one-stop shop to say, well, we could go over here because they actually have both of these things now. So it's interesting. Innovation, I think, is huge in the beverage space, and you're seeing it from all of the relevant players in coffee, continuing to try to innovate. We just launched a collaboration about a week and a half ago with Cheerwine, which is a 108-year-old soda brand from North Carolina, very very revered in the South. And that partnership has been awesome. And we made a Cheerwine mocha and a Cheerwine flavored energy drink, and it's been amazing. Like it's probably going to become a permanent item for us. So I think continuing to innovate is important. People are always liking new things, and you take a page out of the bigger brands, right? Like McDonald's, all the brands you mentioned I think are very good at either introducing new products or they'll recycle things back through again. And it's like, oh, back for a limited time only, right? And it's building that sense of urgency and staying relevant versus just having the same old things. So innovation, I think, is really important for anybody that wants to have longevity in the space.
Well, I'm smiling when you talk about cheer wine because, again, having lived in North Carolina for many years, I'm a big, big fan of cheer wine. So I love that. But what it also speaks to is, you've already mentioned before your connection to the community, and I think that's so great because, of course, as a chain, so-called chain, you could become very generic and just be, very monolithic across the whole thing. But you guys seem to be really invested in the local community, the Carolina piece of it, yes, but also to your point about working with certain organizations, kind of each individual community. Tell me why that was important and how that really comes to life at Clutch.
Yeah, I personally just believe that we have a responsibility to be great stewards in the community, so much to the point that we have what we call the three C's of Clutch, and this is built into our training, and that's customer, culture, and community. All three of them are equally important, and none of them can be sacrificed for another. So, we talk about the customer centric approach. When people are visiting and experiencing Clutch, the culture we create within the four walls of the store. Do people want to actually? Do they enjoy coming to work? Are they like, oh, I have to go to work today, or it's like, man, I get to go have an awesome shift, make some tips, and talk to people. But the culture piece, or I'm sorry, the community piece, the last C there, really for us is what can we do to be a vehicle for good? And so a great example is we just did a proceeds day recently for uh, the mother of one of our store managers, bravely battling cancer. And so we rallied all 14 of our stores together, and all of those stores donated 100% of proceeds from one specific day directly to help her in that fight, right? And we've done that for other community members, not just someone who's related to someone at Clutch, but we look at it as we're a drive-through business. So all people have to do to support and participate, we're not asking you to sign up and like don't give money somewhere. Just come get your favorite drink and we'll take care of the rest. So come treat yourself and help others. And so I think just the way we're set up is it provides a really cool platform to do things that can have impact on people.
Yeah, absolutely. It's great, and so needed in this time for sure. Okay, so going back to the differentiating part of things, I know loyalty is really big for you guys. Tell me about how loyalty comes to life at Clutch and how much that's become so successful. Because am I getting this right? Something like 83% of your customers are something completely bananas. How is that possible?
A lot of intentionality by our team members, and then
Okay.
I think it helps paint the picture of how sticky we are as a brand once people do try us to hopefully convert. So yeah, you hit it on the money. It's 83.5% loyalty rate, and I look at that on a weekly basis, so I can confirm that with confidence. But yeah, so 5 out of every 6 transactions, people are stacking Clutch reward points to then use for future things for free, which is really exciting. And it's very, I think the biggest thing with adoption for loyalty is make it easy to do, right? The harder you make it, the less likely someone's going to do it. I forget what it was. There was something I was trying to sign up for a few nights ago on my phone. And the process was so difficult that I'm like, I don't even want to do this anymore. Like, this is not even worth. So make it very easy. And so customers can sign up just with their phone number, or if they want to download the app, we will give them a free drink as well in exchange for signing up, which, allows us to collect some things from a marketing perspective. So yeah, making it very easy. And then when they want to visit, they can either scan a QR code on the app or just give us their phone number. Takes no time at all. And then they're able to stack some rewards.
I mean, it's amazing that people haven't figured this out by now, the phone number piece of this, because there are things that I think, for like my, I don't know, airline points, they're like, what's your account number? And I'm like, I got to go find my account number. I don't remember my account number. I
Oh my gosh.
remember my phone number, like this isn't very hard. Just do phone number based, right?
Yep. Yep. No, it's great because that is the one thing that you typically will always have, memorized, right? And it's funny. It's actually sick. I know my Southwest number by heart, but that's the only one I know. I don't know any of the other ones. But yeah, no, it make it easy, right? The easier it is for anything. I mean, our app is not perfectly where I want it to be. I want to continue to refine some things because the easier it is, the more likely people will adopt, spend time there, versus if it's really clunky. So.
Totally, totally. All right. So, related to that, then is value. You guys have really emphasized value, but it's interesting because just earlier in the conversation, you were talking about higher quality product, which comes with a higher price point. A lot of people think value, lower price point. Tell me about the value message at Clutch. How you guys make that work?
Yeah, there's a couple things. I mean, we typically are always priced a little bit below Starbucks. And it was interesting. I did a little bit of market research a couple weeks ago just to kind of see where they were at. I mean, their prices have exploded even more so than, a couple years post COVID, everything went up, right? And then it didn't, it leveled off. It didn't really drop down. And now it's kind of going up again. So when we think about value, it's the experience again. We have when you turn onto the property, we have surround sound speakers that are inside and out. So you've got a positive energy and vibe going. We're the host of the party and you're the guest, right? For the whether you're there for 1 minute or 10 minutes in line, as the 10th car in line, we're there to host. So I think creating that experience is a big piece. And then also in terms of the value, like our large size is a 32 ounce. You can't get a 32 ounce iced mocha at most of the larger brands. And if they made a 44 commercially, I would bring it on tomorrow because consumers would grab it and sip on it throughout the day. I think that's a big piece is looking at like the sizing as well. Everything for us is just a little bit larger. We want to give people, the best bang for their buck.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so taking a step back and looking at, you've scaled this thing to 15 locations now in 7 years. I imagine going back to the early days of when you opened this, you don't come from the West Coast and open a coffee chain in North Carolina just to have one. I imagine when you started this, you saw this as an opportunity for something bigger, right? Were you going into this always thinking I could scale this thing?
My growth mindset, yes. When we started the brand, the three of us as co-founders, we wanted to make sure we could prove out the concept first, right? So with the first two, let's make sure we have something that's scalable. And so we were really intentional for probably about a year and a half of focusing on those first two stores to get those right. And then we looked at potentially expanding. So it was 2.5 years from opening stores. Stores one and two opened 4 weeks apart. After that, it was 2.5 years before store number three opened. So we tried to be very intentional about making sure we had the core base right and building our bench of leaders as well. And then we looked at starting to grow. I think we've learned a ton through the process. We've made some awesome decisions on sites, and we've made a couple that I wouldn't do again. But you learn from that and make your next decision better. So yeah, we always had, once we got the first couple solidified and said, okay, we've got something, then it was like, all right, great. We have aspirations to scale. How are you going to do that? And there's a lot of nuances to making that happen too.
And to that point, franchising, is that a part of what you want to do?
Right now, no. Never say never, but we've been very protective of the brand and wanting to make sure that we kept the culture tight. I've got some mentors who have had a lot more experience in the franchise world than I have and have shared a lot of the roadkill and things to be aware of like, as you go through this. And even during going through COVID, talking to people who were on both sides as a franchisee and a franchisor and kind of like the finger pointing, right? Of like business is dropping because these global things are happening. Who's responsible? What support are we getting? There's a lot of stuff. So if we ever do it, we're going to do it right. And I think it's a big lift to do franchising, to do it correctly. We're not just going to half-ass it.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. This is such a fascinating time for this category too, because if you look at any category over the years that boomed in a particular time frame, for example, better burgers about 15 years ago, or then fast casual pizza, or froyo, or poke, or Mediterranean, everything always gets to this point where it feels like it's a little bit of a race, and it's it's not like some pissing
Chicken right now too.
yeah, well, and so what I'm wondering is, there is to some degree of getting to certain markets first because you set the expectation. You can kind of own it if you're first to market. The West Coast pretty tapped out. We can all agree with the drive-through coffee, but the East Coast and the Midwest, this big open, slate that you guys could move in and introduce a community to drive-through coffee, and then anybody who comes in after you, it's like, oh, well, it's like clutch. So like that's kind of, I feel like we're in that moment, and I'm just wondering from your perspective if you feel that's true. And again, having lived so many years in North Carolina and knowing that what you guys are doing is pretty new to that market, do you feel like you're setting a bar for the Carolinas, or I guess planting your flag there before the Dutch Bros of the world get there?
Such a fascinating question and scenario because we've seen both sides. So like a little bit of contextual history. So Dutch Bros is 33 years old now at this point. 90, they opened in 92. Seven Brew and us, if we're just looking at like coffee players in that geography, we're both the same age. We both started 2017, 2018. What's changing now, or what we see is if we are if we are first to market in a town, and then let's say Seven Brew or another small, let's say I shouldn't say smaller, but like another brand like Big B or Scooters or someone else comes in, right? The typical narrative will be like, oh, they're like Clutch. Exactly to your point. Flip side, we go into a market secondary, right? We go into Greenville secondary when Seven Brew was already there. True story. They're like, oh, they're like Seven Brew. It is kind of a like if you're first there, you're gonna get a little bit of that. The one trump card in all of that is if you're like, let's say when we're running dark ads in a new geography to promote that we're going somewhere, and I see all the comments of people that are excited, or someone's like, oh, this looks like Dutch Bros. Dutch Bros holds the one trump card because they got a 30-year brand track record, right? And someone visited their aunt in Phoenix, or they went to, Disney World and saw them in Orlando, like that kind of a thing. So that they kind of hold that one piece there to say it looks like that. But typically, to your point, like in the Carolinas, because we're around the same age, even though, Seven Brew has picked up a lot of velocity being backed by Blackstone now, and they've got, I don't know, 250 locations, something like that. If you're first there, you typically have you get a little bit of credit of like, oh, it's like this. And so then the goal is, okay, well, how deep and wide can you go with that customer base to really have them be loyal to you, long term?
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess it then comes back to that community work, right? Because if you can then plant those roots in a community, I mean, I think any market you go into, there's always going to be some base of customers that you can win over. Either they went to the other place and didn't like it, or they don't even know the other place exists because it's not in the right part of town. They don't drive by it on their way to work or whatever that is. But it seems like going back to that sort of community part of things for you guys, I mean, seems like a genuine, again, difference maker where you can impact lives. And then it's a further way to build loyalty and ensure that they're coming to you and not the competitor, right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And to be totally fair, I think the other brands we've talked about also do a really good job. Everybody kind of has their own niche in terms of how they give back, but we really do try to be hyper local because I think that there's nothing that's more authentic than a real-time scenario happens, right? Or a certain community has a tradition that goes back 20 or 30 years that they're part of. Great. How do we contribute to that and become a positive component of what's already going on in that area? So finding things that are, it's not looking for like, well, let's work with one high level charity that everybody knows. No, let's get hyper local and like what are things that matter in each community because they're different. Like I mean, Mooresville is super different than Greenville, which is different than Columbia. They're all unique, and so we'll see if we can do that at scale when we have 100 stores. But that's part of our thing is do the things that you can do locally as long as you can because I think that's very authentic.
Right. And I know that something else I was reading about you guys build up these ambassadors for the brand,
Yeah.
which I mean, I assume this is just very loyal customers that can kind of help you spread the word. But who are these people that you really lean into as ambassadors? What do you hope that they can accomplish for you?
Yeah, that's a really interesting program we kind of built from scratch, and we didn't invent the wheel. I just think we have our own style of it that works well for us. So they're either major fans, like major raving fans. We typically need them to have some type of a social media presence, right? In terms of having followers to be able to share posts and things of that nature. But we'll also look and scout for them when we go into a new area. So if we're going to a new area and we see people that are micro influencers in a certain pocket, it's like, great, let's engage with them. Let's bring them in before we even open. Let's give them a chance to be the first ones, right? That'll never get old of like, oh, I was one of the first ones. I got to go see behind the scenes before this even opened, right? It's tough to put a value on that. So we'll go look for them locally as well. We obviously want to make sure they're aligned with us in terms of, how what do I want to say? How they post, right? Like we want them to be very authentic and be themselves, but making sure it's people who align with our values as a brand, in terms of being people first. And so, yeah, it's a really cool thing because then you have them. I think humans in general, we typically tend to trust recommendations from our peers more so than a brand saying, "Hey, you're gonna like us, and here's why."
Totally agree with that. All right. So another interesting thing that happened this week, as you and I speak, is Starbucks in talking to their shareholders, Brian Nichol, CEO, announced that they're really going to push more into the third place coffee shop experience that Starbucks was always known for back in the early days. And I find it really fascinating for a number of reasons. I'm sure you're following this closely as well. But to some degree, it almost feels like Starbucks is trying to say, hey, these drive-through coffee brands are coming in and taking share. And instead of going head to head with them on the drive-through part of things, we're going to go sort of, the other direction with more of the on-site experience. I have my opinions on whether or not that will work for them, because there's a whole thing about real estate and whatever that and the on-the-go consumer, whether or not they want that as much today or not. But I wanted to get your opinion on it, because when you look at the state of coffee, we've spent the last 3 years talking about drive-through only coffee places, and the last 3 years has of course seen a boom in such concepts around the country. And I don't think I see consumers going back to I'm not going to drive as much and want things drive through as much. I just don't see that going away. So what do you make of this, that Starbucks is going back to this, and what does it mean for the drive through coffee space?
On a personal note, as it pertains to like how it impacts clutch, I'm cheering for Starbucks to keep doing that.
Yeah, yeah, I hear that.
Because I think you're right. I think people, if you look at how we've evolved as a society over the last 5, 10, 15 years, it's more instant gratification. It's innovating ways to get things. You can now, if you want to order, this is coming soon for us as well, but like if you want to order something from DoorDash, like you'll eventually be in the Charlotte area, you'll be able to get, or the Carolinas, you'll be able to get Clutch DoorDash to you, right? Like, how do you make this easy for consumers to get? So the in-house part, it's not our forte. We have a couple stores we've done that are end caps that have a walk-in lobby. It's fine, but it's not our bread and butter, and so we're trying to stick with what we're good at. I think it's interesting approaches they've done where, like, you can now have your coffee in a glass if you want to sit there for a while. I think uh it's cute, but I don't, what if I want to sit for 20 minutes and then I want to take it and go? Do I have to get a new cup from you and then swap it over? Like, I I'm not super sold on it from a business perspective. Kind of the same thing with like even bringing, the 200,000 Sharpies, and we're going to put a note or a smiley face or things on there. Those are things, candidly, that like the brands like us, Seven Brew, Dutch Bros, have been doing that since day one, hasn't changed. And so now you're kind of like, can we play? Does it feel forced or is it authentic? There are some Starbucks that I go to, and I actually think there are some that are genuine, but as a collective, it just feels like, hey, we're going to try to make it feel like you're more, more special. Do it through your actions, not your words. So gosh, it's just a weird. I don't know. For turnover purposes, for volume, drive through all day. Like, I want to just be going drive through, have a brief yet impactful conversation, make someone's day brighter in those couple minutes you get to interact, and then get them on their way. We're not. Here's what I would say: we're not the destination. I don't think the coffee space is the destination. We are a stop along the way to fuel you to wherever you're going.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And if I think about my own personal experiences, which I'm sure are very average across other people, which is like, if I need to get out of the house and go work somewhere else, sure, I could go and sit at a coffee shop and do that. But probably 95% of my coffee experiences are, I'm going from point A to point B, and there's a coffee place in between. And it's either an indulgence that was pre-planned, or it's an impulse buy or whatever. But it's like, yeah, I'm going to swing in there and get a coffee. And I do that more than I say, I'm going to go work from the coffee shop for a couple of hours. But to that point, I'm also curious to get your perspective on, it really seems like right now there's a tidal shift in work from home. It feels like a lot more companies are saying, okay, come back to the office. There will very likely from that become once again more urban development, more movement into downtown cores. With that, you might see more reason for somebody like Starbucks to invest in those locations, so you have a business meeting that comes and meets there. But I mean, I assume, for you being primarily in suburban locations, I mean, don't expect we're about to see the suburban driving activity change anytime soon, right? I mean, if anything, maybe it shifts day parts a little bit.
Yeah, I know. I fully agree with your perspective there. I don't think people are going to slow down and say, you know what, like, I mean, maybe if we were in Europe and everybody wants to have more of the cafe experience, but I don't think that's how America flows. I think people want to like have a great experience, get a great product, and then go to your kid's soccer practice or head to work or whatever you've got going on. It's help me. help fuel me to what I need to do, right? So yeah, I think you're spot on. I don't see consumer behavior changing where people are going to start driving less or sitting down just because we all have so many things going on and we have a desire to be involved in a lot of things that doesn't usually involve stopping for 30 minutes or an hour and sitting somewhere.
Yeah, exactly. All right, Darren, last question for you. If we look ahead to, let's say you and I revisit our conversation in 5 years. We sit down, we're like, hey, remember in 2025 we had that chat. Now it's 2030. We want to look back on Clutch Coffee. What story are you telling me in 5 years about Clutch Coffee, and where is it at that point?
I think in 5 years, the story is that Clutch has impacted numerous communities, has created hundreds of jobs, and in 5 years probably has 50 plus locations that are all quality locations that are serving the communities that they're in.
Exciting. Well, I hope I speak to you before that. We'll make sure before 5 years we have that sit down. But I am
Love
excited
it.
to watch Clutch Coffee and see what you guys can accomplish. So, Darren Spicer, co-founder and CEO of Clutch Coffee, thanks so much for your time.
Hey, thank you for having me on.
That was my interview with Clutch Coffee CEO Darren Spicer. So what should you learn from this interview? Here are my 7 takeaways. My first takeaway is that the best market for your business may not be anywhere close to you. Darren grew up in Oregon and he actually lives in California, but he's getting his business off the ground in the Carolinas. The reason why is because as a West Coaster, he realized the West Coast is pretty tapped out for drive-thru coffee. That's where it came from, the Pacific Northwest, Washington, Oregon. That's where these brands really first took root, spread into California, all around the coast. Not that there's no room left to grow, but if you're looking to start your own business in a field that already has some pretty heavy players or already has a little bit of saturation, go find the market where there is white space. Go find who doesn't have that business yet. For Darren, he found it in the Charlotte, North Carolina area, and they've grown around the Carolinas because so far the other players haven't moved into those parts of the country yet. Seven Brew got its start right about the same time as Clutch Coffee. It started in Arkansas and has been growing across the Southeast. But before these two brands, there was really nothing in that area. Same goes for other parts of the country. Myself in Ohio, it's just getting here now. Seven Brew just came into Columbus, where I am. Dutch Bros is finally getting to the East Coast. The point is that if you're in a field with a lot of competitors, there's a good chance that there is white space out there, but it might not be your neighborhood, your town, or even your part of the country. It might not be in your region. It might be on the other coast, as in Darren's case. And that's okay. Sometimes you've got to go find the white space in order to get your brand off the ground. But obviously that comes with its sacrifices. You have to be willing to move or to travel a lot in order to do so. So think through whether or not that is worth it for you if you've got an idea to start a new business. My second takeaway is that even when you're trying to save on costs, quality must not be sacrificed. Darren said that they chose the best possible coffee roast they could for Clutch. When they started, they did a blind taste test. They chose one based on the taste, and of course it was the most expensive one. But as he said, they don't want to skimp on quality. They don't want to offer anything other than the best that they could find. And yes, that means it's a little bit more expensive, but they are just going to make it work. Today there's a lot of pressure to cut back on costs, to increase your margins. There's so many pressures, cost of goods, labor costs. Obviously, you're looking for places to save. But when it comes to quality, you cannot cut corners. You cannot make any sacrifices. Your quality is your calling card. And well, it should be anyway. And if that is the case, then you don't want to pull back on that quality. So Darren points out, again, they went for the best roast of coffee. It's a little bit more expensive, but it is entirely worth it because Clutch Coffee fans know this brand for its quality of coffee, which is a step above the other national coffee players that may be in their neighborhood. My third takeaway is that it's critical that beverage players find a calling card in the innovation wars. So I mentioned quality, of course, is one of those, but you have to diversify too your beverage portfolio in order to stay ahead. You see that going on across beverage right now. You see so many of the coffee players doing energy drinks and smoothies, boba. They're getting into all kinds of new beverage channels because they're trying to one up each other in the products that they offer. I loved Darren's example, though, of how they found that unique path for them when it came to the menu. They partnered with Cheerwine. Now, if you've not spent any time in the Carolinas, if you've not lived in the Carolinas, you may not know what Cheerwine is. It is a beloved soda that is, I could compare it to like a Dr. Pepper or something. It's a cherry soda. but it's beloved in the Carolinas. I had the privilege of living there for 12 years, and I loved Cheerwine. Everybody loves Cheerwine, and you can find it on a lot of restaurant menus down there, but it's really nowhere outside of the Carolinas. And so that became a really unique opportunity for Clutch Coffee to stand out with their menu. They have Cheerwine flavored beverages, a Cheerwine mocha. That sounds fascinating. I have not had the privilege of having this product yet or visiting Clutch Coffee yet, but I'm excited to give that a try because I know that brand of Cheerwine. I know it's something that I enjoy, and so would be excited to go check it out on the Clutch menu. The point here is you have to find your unique identity on the menu because this is the way in beverage, especially, that you're going to stand out from your competitors. If you just have everything that's the same as the next guy, the customers might pick the other guy over you. So find that unique thing. But again, with the Cheerwine example, maybe that unique thing is part of your neighborhood. Maybe it's another local business. Maybe it's, some ingredient or flavor that's popular in your region. Whatever it is, embrace it so that it gives you that unique menu offering for your guest. My fourth takeaway is that your loyalty program must be as easy as possible to access. I cannot emphasize this one enough. I think I mentioned in the conversation with Darren, but I have had so many experiences with loyalty apps where I've abandoned the purchase because I'm fiddling through my loyalty sign in. I'm trying to find my password. I'm trying to sign in. I'm convinced that the password is the right one, but the app still is not recognizing me. Whatever it is, it's clumsy and frustrating, and I have abandoned the business entirely in favor of a competitor because of my problems with loyalty. Clutch Coffee uses a phone number to access the loyalty program. This is, by the way, something that Seven Brew does as well. I know it's becoming popular with other services, but listen, your phone number, you probably have it memorized, right? Of course, you have to memorize your phone number. And if you've got that memorized, then you don't have to look into your phone for your password. You don't have to go through, all these hoops to try to get access to loyalty. It's just a phone number. If you can do this, please do this because it is so simple, so straightforward. And here's the results. Here's the return on the investment. You ready for this? 83% of Clutch Coffee guests are using loyalty. That is mind-blowing to me. But the reason why is because it's so easy. As Darren said, the harder you make it, the less likely that someone's going to do it. So keep in mind as you're launching a loyalty program, an app could be fine. You could, email, whatever you're using. There are ways to make those work, but it's got to be easy. It doesn't have to be phone number, but it's got to be easy, so that when your customers are coming into your business, they're not fiddling around and taking forever to find the loyalty and then maybe abandoning it altogether. Make your loyalty program easy. My fifth takeaway is that as an operator, you are the host of your own party. That was something that Darren said was, how they're trying to create this great experience, create value in the experience at Clutch Coffee. And it just stood out to me because everybody talks about experience, but this notion that you're hosting a party for your customer, I really like that because it doesn't have to have loud music. That was, the example Darren gave, that they have speakers in the drive-thru and there's music playing and people can have fun and get a good vibe. It doesn't have to be necessarily loud music or anything like that. But you're hosting a party one way or another. What's the party that you're hosting? What is the vibe? What's the mood? What does it sound like? What does it smell like? All of these things should be considered when you're building an experience. But that party element is so important because if you've had a dinner party at your house, what do? Well, you maybe clean your house. Maybe you spend more extra time preparing the food and beverage. Maybe you set up a room special to look or sound a certain way. You put a lot of thought into it. Put a lot of thought into your restaurant experience. This is what your guests are experiencing. This is the party they're attending. And, the best dinner party, you leave it saying, I had so much fun. I want to do that again. You don't want to leave a dinner party or people leaving your dinner party saying, I didn't really enjoy that. Same with your restaurant. Have a party. You're in control of what kind of party it is, but throw a party for your guests. The best kind of party will get them coming back. My sixth takeaway is that you should develop a strong bench of leaders before pursuing growth. When Darren launched this with his co-founders, Clutch Coffee, back in 2018, they knew they wanted to scale. They always did this in order to launch something that would scale and grow. And so in doing that, they took a couple of years with their first 2 shops to get the model right. And part of that was developing leadership through, identifying employees that they could develop as leaders, because then when they opened 3, 4, 5, 6 and started growing, they needed that bench of leaders to manage those shops. Same goes for you if you're in the early days of launching your business. It might be tempting to grow quickly if you're really popular, or if you have the fortune of coming into some capital to help you grow. All of that's great, but try not to do it until you have some leaders developed within your system who can grow with you and who can help you by moving into management positions in those new locations, because that is going to help you infinitely as you try to tap into new markets, connect with new communities. You need somebody there that you can trust. My 7th and final takeaway is that by building relationships with influencers, you develop a roster of ambassadors. Everybody talks about influencers now. Everybody knows that it's great to connect with influencers in communities in order to get the attention of folks. That's great. But I think just to emphasize the point here that Darren was making, which is they're going into a new market. They connect with the influencers early, get them to be the first ones to check out Clutch Coffee, because in doing that, these people become fans. They feel special. They feel like they got this insight into something early before anybody else, and they become a fan. And the point is that you don't want to have to keep paying influencers to check you out. You want them to organically become fans, because as they become fans, they'll keep sharing it and then again become ambassadors. That's part of the strategy at Clutch that they've used to grow and connect with the communities that they have. They've created ambassadors out of their super users, and a lot of those folks are heavily involved in social media and being influencers. You know, as Darren pointed out, people trust recommendations from their peers and from people more than just generic brand ads. And so if you can connect with influencers early, turn them into fans of the brand, they become ambassadors who continue to harp on your business and getting people to go there. Those are all my takeaways for today. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Please remember to subscribe to Takeaway wherever you listen to podcasts and leave your feedback. You can also email me at sam.oches@informa.com. Thanks again, and talk to you next week.